Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the VR Story Architects panel. My name is Celine Tricart. I am a director and I'm a producer of VR content, and I am the founder of Lucid Dream Production. Some of you know me. I'm passionate about storytelling. I'm also passionate about technology. I wrote 2 books on 3D filmmaking and now working on my new book on VR filmmaking. And how to use this fascinating new medium to tell compelling stories. Today I feel very grateful and lucky to introduce you to these very talented people. All of them has contributed to push the boundaries of VR storytelling, and they have agreed to come here today to share this knowledge with you. I also want to thank Victor Hardward, the organizer of the Digital Hollywood. He pretty much gave me total freedom to organize that panel. I feel very lucky. He's been a very big supporter of women in film and diversity in the industry, and I really want to thank him for that. So I hope you have your pens ready, because you're going to learn a lot of cool stuff today. This is VR from the trenches. This is down to earth, no blah blah. People who actually do VR are going to talk about VR. How exciting is that? So first, let me introduce the panelists very quickly. Here we have J.T. Petty, who is the writer and director of movies, video game, television, and comics, including Splinter Cell, The Borrowers, Outlast, and The Walking Dead. He has written and directed Gone for Samsung and Skybound, and it is his first work in virtual reality. Then we have Christina. Christina Heller is the CEO and co-founder of VR Playhouse, a creative studio and full-service virtual reality production based in Los Angeles. VR Playhouse Interactive 360 and CGI narrative The Surrogate was nominated for the Innovation Award at South by Southwest. Congratulations. And it was one of the 15 projects produced by the company last year. They've been busy. Christina directed and produced 2 feature documentaries, and she currently serves on the board of directors for Shift. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting diversity in virtual reality. Thank you. Michael Connolly. Michael Connolly has supervised the creation of characters that have grossed over $2 billion at the worldwide box office. A prolific designer and author, he has published books of fiction and sold original design for games now in production. He has also written screenplay and option work for feature film development. His recent turn as digital effects supervisor for Snow White and the Huntsman yielded the Oscar nomination for the work. Michael founded Renaissance Technologies, a game company, and then joined the game division of Ritman Hughes Studios, and soon migrated into feature film work. He is now the creative director at Blackthorn Media. Then we have Jessica. Jessica Cantor is an LA-based director, producer, and interactive storyteller, creating film and interactive marketing. Jessica recently directed and produced a short VR film called The Archer, which has programmed in the Kaleidoscope VR Film Festival. Jessica's second VR film, Ashes, has just premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. And then we have Paul Raphael. Paul is a filmmaker and visual artist based in Montreal. He teamed up with collaborator Félix Lajeunesse and created award-winning stereoscopic 3D film, multimedia installation, and commercials presented across the world. The 2 directors developed 3D 360 recording technology and software and founded Felix and Paul Studios, a complete creative production and technology studio dedicated to the exploration of storytelling and the medium of VR, live-action virtual reality. Felix and Paul Studio is recognized as a pioneer and key player in the fast-growing industry of virtual reality content. They have a creation partnership with Oculus, and they co-produce Jurassic Park, Apatosaurus with Universal Studio, and Inside the Box of Curious alongside Cirque du Soleil Media. Now, maybe you know, but Felix and Paul just won a daytime Emmy for Outstanding Interactive Media just last week. I think that deserves some applause. Yeah. All right, so today each of the panelists will talk about a specific aspect of VR storytelling and illustrate it with one of their latest work. So I'll try to make sure we have enough time for a Q&A at the end. But it also, if you want to ask any question during the panel, please feel free to do so. And last but not least, I want to do a little social media challenge today during the panel. So if you like Twitter, please feel free to tweet about this panel and do hashtag Digital Hollywood and tag myself at Celine Tricard. And at the end of the panel, I'll choose the best tweet, and you will get a very cool gift, VR glasses that is compatible with any smartphone. So please tweet. That gives you a good example to be looking at your phone during the panel, right? All right, let's get started now. Jelly?
Great.
Up to you. Jelly will be talking about his project Gone that was done with Samsung and Skybound and Weaver. And we'll also talk about the specific aspect of spectator versus participant in virtual reality.
Cool. Yeah, hi, thanks for coming. So I'm going to show a short video clip first that shows some video from Gone and sort of what we were doing with it. And just by way of intro, it's basically, it's a narrative, it's a story about a woman whose daughter goes missing. And she starts to, of course she flips out, she's sad, her daughter's gone, she starts looking around, and when she gets back home realizes that her daughter was keeping a lot of secrets, right? Like a stranger mailed her daughter a phone about a month before she vanished, and it becomes sort of this thing of trying to figure out who her daughter is and where her daughter went, if she's still alive. And because I'm a sci-fi nerd, it sort of becomes like what her daughter has become. And in making this with Samsung, we developed something with their Milk platform.
Sorry, I don't think they can hear you.
Yeah? Everybody, even in the back? I'll get closer. Awesome. So with Samsung, we developed a sort of system of navigation because the Gear VR is probably the most limited currently of the VR platforms, and we wanted to have a way that you could move around inside of the environment. So we have a system of hotspots that this trailer sort of shows and gives you a sense of the tone of the piece. Is anybody near a light switch?
Yeah.
Super. Oh, great, thank you.
Having Charles around is really good for that. He always makes time for it. Wait, can you see Amelia? Sorry, she's such a little squirrel.
Thank you. Sort of talking about POV in this, this was a project that was designed for VR right from the start. I mean, And the first thing I started thinking about, like we knew that we wanted it to be a missing child thriller, and the idea of making something that is essentially a passive narrative and a thriller, like building tension, is kind of the opposite of what I'm used to, which is like movies and TV and that sort of stuff. Like anytime you're building tension, it's about, you know, the edges of the frame and the edits, and those are just things that we don't have. And the whole idea was sort of to try to make you feel like you're in the place where the mother is, where because you can look everywhere, you're always missing something. So when you're in the playground, if you're looking in the right place, you might be able to see more about where this child vanished to if you knew where to look. But we've designed things specifically so that you're distracted and you're not seeing what those things are. And then when she's gone back to her house and she's looking through her daughter's belongings, you know, you can navigate around and see different pieces of the room and sort of see, you know, what she's been hiding from her parents. And the experience, like, honestly wants to be a little bit frustrating, right? Like, it wants to have that feeling that you could find this child if you knew where to look, but you don't know where to look. And so it's sort of a forensic experience in a lot of ways, right? Like, all of the story is there in the actual environment. And we sort of tried to design it so you're constantly making a choice between paying attention to the emotional story, because you can watch, you know, these parents freaking out and all of this heartbreak and that stuff, or you can actually be paying attention to the expositional part of the story. And the tension between those two things and always keeping them on separate sides of the sphere felt like sort of the goal. And I think that's where it works when it does work. One of the big things, I mean, we were talking about this right before the panel started about whether VR narrative works better as a first-person experience or third-person, right? And that was certainly a big part of this conversation starting, was like, are you going to be a character, or are you like a disembodied ghost who's in this environment? And there's like lots of passionate arguments. Like, I actually, for this one, felt pretty strongly that it needed to be a disembodied ghost. Partly, you know, the whole problem of whether you have a body or not is a giant thing, and I think if you don't have agency to control it, and you've got a body, that's a strictly creepy experience. And even first-person narrative in other mediums, right? Like, if you're in a point of view shot in a movie for more than 5 seconds, you're probably Jason Voorhees, right? Like, there's not an experience of an extended POV that doesn't get creepy very quickly. But I do understand a big instinct to have that, because it is your point of view inside VR when it works, at least I find, has a feeling of responsibility that is not there in any other medium. Like, I actually feel a bit like a witness where I am. And I think that's really interesting emotionally in the stories that we're telling in VR, as opposed to any other, as to film and video games or anything else, is that, like, that idea of being responsible for what you're watching is so unique and I think pretty precious, right? Like we're in a period of pretty reflexive filmmaking, right? Like all of this Quentin Tarantino style stuff that it's like, remember these other movies that you've seen? You know how you're just watching a movie, so it's super fun to watch this woman get murdered? And like, it's like, it's super fun in movies, and it would never work in VR, at least not for like another 80 years until we're tired of it. But like, I think that that's really exciting, and that's dramatically really useful in what we're sort of doing here, because you do feel responsible that this child vanished because you weren't paying attention. And you do feel like you're responsible for her not finding her until she does, because you're not seeing the things. And I think, and I know we're supposed to be telling like the sort of nuts and bolts, very, very practical advice, but I do feel like that is a really high-minded ideal for VR, is that responsibility as a viewer should hopefully lead to more like humanitarian stories. And those are certainly the moments, you know, like Paul's piece, Strangers, right? That's the one where you're just watching the dude play piano. Like, I don't want to say there's not a lot going on narratively, like as an insult, but like, it's really nice to be in that apartment. And it's really just like all of those moments of turning around, I'm like, oh, he has a dog. And like, that's an experience I wouldn't have in a movie. Like, there's a closeness there. And I'm getting close to 10 minutes. I could talk for a long time, but yeah, humanitarian filmmaking VR. Let's do it.
Okay. Should I go up to that
Yes.
one? Okay, good.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Shakti. Next one is Christina. Christina will be showing her project first person and talk about performance and working with actors in VR. So let me get started.
While you get started, I can start
Yep.
going. So first person was some very early experimentations in VR that we were doing at VR Playhouse, and it's part of an 8-episode series that we are actually going to release this episode in a week and a half. So this is the premiere, I guess. I think the first person for me was about excitement over the promise of the future of what's possible in virtual reality. The things that get me really excited are eventually when we can have a little bit more interactivity in our stories, and when perhaps we can engage in real social interactions with other people inside the headsets. And I know that when I'm inside a VR headset, there's something about someone looking at me that is a really powerful emotional experience. And so, you know, at the time when we first started conceiving this piece, there was a lot of action sports pieces and things that were being published in 360 video, and I was really like, I wanted to feel what emotional engagement could be like inside the VR headset. And so this piece is an exploration of, can you really feel like you're looking at somebody and having a conversation inside virtual reality, and also playing with the subconscious reality that we all experience. So inside this first person experience, you are having a conversation, but you're also kind of switching back and forth between the mental life of your avatar and what's actually happening. We did not go with a body for this for the exact reason that you said. It's, first of all, really technically challenging question to address, and also it's weird. So, you know, yeah, you don't have a body, and you kind of just get, like, if you watch it, you kind of just get over it in a minute. You're like, all right, I don't have a body. I don't know what my body is. I'm just going to mentally fill in the gap of what that is. And so, as also in an attempt to make this as real feeling as possible, we worked with actors who had a lot of experience with the Meisner theater technique, which is a very like naturalistic, improvisational acting technique, and also people that we were actually real friends with in real life, so that you'll see your first person voice, because you do have a voice and you engage with these people. There's sort of this real naturalness and chemistry that comes across with those people, and I can talk more about that after we watch it. Oh, I also want to give a shout out to John Schwarzel, who helped us stitch this. Okay. Where am I? Something. Yeah. Oh, I see. It's over here. I was looking at the wrong screen. Okay, cool.
You can drag and drop.
Sure. Oh, wait, real fast. Pause. This is about a recent divorcee who's stepping back into the world of dating for the first time after his divorce. Okay.
Laura Dern was amazing.
Laura Dern's
I
always
fucking love Laura Dern.
even in that show that HBO gave her that they canceled it. Like a lot of people loved, and I watched it and I was like, I don't know, maybe I like got on it after it sort of jumped the shark. Is Enlightened? Is that it?
I never saw it.
I don't know. The whole premise just seemed a little simple. Whatever though, I'm kind of harsh.
You can be.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of I watch a lot of shit.
When was the last time you left this house? Do you have to think about it that hard?
I'm thinking. Yeah.
You can't honestly just like, I went outside yesterday.
Well, no, I know I had a date last, but I'm trying to think if I like left. I was married for a while.
Okay.
Not anymore.
You getting that?
I went outside.
You getting some of that? Is that...
I went on a date.
When?
Outside.
When?
I don't know, it was like last week.
Tell me about it.
So how'd you get a rabbit?
I got her at the Humane Society.
I'm sorry, where?
The Humane Society.
They rescue rabbits?
Yeah, at the pound with all the pit bulls, there's like 2 rabbits. And there was this one and then one that looked just like her, who was maybe her mother or something. And the guy at the pound was like, don't take this one because this one's really grumpy. And so I was like, well, I have to save the grumpy rabbit. Like, so they don't, someone has to take the grumpy one.
So, her name's Maddie.
Uh-huh.
I met her on Tinder.
Okay.
We had a really good time. She brought her rabbit. She's got like a rabbit. I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, you're like...
She brought her pet rabbit on a date.
Yeah.
Like on a leash?
No, it was in a bag.
Like a little dog?
Yeah.
That's fucking weird, dude.
In a bag. No, it was cool. It was cool. She asked me. She was like, hey, this is like, it's like a quirky, fun, weird thing she does. I don't know. How long have you been on Tinder?
I've been on for 1 week.
Wow.
And I've been letting my friends do it for me, so I'm not the one swiping, because I find that to be a little bit like sexist, or I don't know. It feels wrong. So I let my friends swipe for me, and then I've been out on 3 dates.
Wow.
This is the 3rd one, and this is probably going to be my last because I already erased the app because the first 2 were not so much fun, and I just figured, maybe it's not for me. But you seem nice. It's going great so far.
Yeah, well, that's nice. I hope it's your last one. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave it with a cliffhanger because it's a little bit long and I won't get to say anything. But I think there were a few things that work. I think in this piece, one is like a lot of times when I'm in VR, I watch performances and there's a falseness about the performance that like really takes me out of the experience. And I think it's just because everything does feel so real. So if there's even the littlest element of like acting, I'm just like I cringe. And so I feel like the fact that this was a lot of this was very improvisational. The fact that our actors had actual relationships to each other. That I think that really comes across in this piece. And our hope is that, my hope when someone watches this is that they can actually feel the comfort of the relationship between themselves and Michael Dunn, and they can feel that warm, and the warm sort of friendly, welcoming energy that Maddie projects to you. And my hope is that they feel something as a result of that, and maybe. And they would feel something that feels a little different than when they're watching a film because they feel like more actually involved in the experience. So technically, some of the ways we pulled this off was we had an iPhone, well, 2 different ways. So with the Maddie stuff, we actually duct taped an iPhone to the monopod or to the tripod. So, and then Ian, who was the voice, was FaceTiming her while they were acting. And so she's a very good actress, so she's looking at the ball of GoPros, but she can kind of see Ian underneath it, and he can see her. So there's this naturalness of their sort of back and forth. And then she is also connected to a lavalier, which he can hear. And so they had this way of sort of interacting with each other. With Michael Dunn, I think you can see it. There is, you can't really see it, but right here there's a laptop. And I have this screen off, but Ian can see Michael. And Michael can't see Ian. So Michael can hear Ian, but he can't see Ian. And Ian is upstairs on an iMac. And that is how they were able to have this like really kind of easy, effortless conversation. And they're both mic'd so that I'm picking up both audio. And yeah, so I guess that's it.
As a director,
Yeah.
how do you know if the take is good enough? How do you know if
How do I know if the what is the tech?
the take
The take.
is good?
I mean, at this point, we're getting better. I think we shot this with. I think we shot the Maddie thing with 10 GoPros, which I would never do now. This was all like early days. So I was like, 10 is obviously better than 6. So I think we shot Maddie with 10, and it's a miracle that they all worked. Michael, I think we might have shot with 6. These days, we've been using modified we've been using modified lenses on 3 GoPros. So you can kind of, 3 GoPros is a lot more managed, and it depends on, that's not the, I want to be clear, for VR Playhouse, that's not the only rig we use, but for something that's this, like monoscopic, I would absolutely recommend this as a solution because it's super easy. 3 GoPros, like you can be pretty sure they're gonna run. 6, sometimes you would lose a camera. And we did a few takes, like those, like there were definitely some takes where a camera didn't work and I just had them do it again. So yeah, thank you. That was just like, one last thing. One of the also fun things is I was like, oh, and I'll put them in a beautiful place. Like, it's not really taking advantage of 360 in the way that some pieces do where like, oh, there's somebody coming behind me. But I was like, well, if it's 360 and you're there, like, I'm going to put them in a beautiful place in Griffith Park. And then it actually was sort of a happy coincidence that there was this penis drawn on the table because I was like, oh, it's like an Easter egg that I didn't even plan. Yeah.
I was certain you draw it yourself on the table.
Yeah, because that's definitely the kind of thing I do in my spare time. Yeah.
The height of the TV in the apartment was more offensive to me.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's my house, and if you look, actually, we have Strange Days playing on the TV, which is also a fun, like, little Easter egg, and we tried to do some things like that.
All right, let's go to Michael. Michael, if you want to come over and talk about
Sure, okay.
Your project, Abbots Book. I don't know if you guys know about that project. It's scary. It's on the edge to survive. I know he doesn't like me to say that, but I've never been able to finish it because I was too scared. It's very well done. Do you want to show the video?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let's do that. So this is a little, minute and a half or so video of just some first-person point of view of the project. We'll let this play for now.
Pure unsettled soul, do you still believe your son lives tomorrow? Even the lowest commoners will rise against you now that we found the truth of your curse.
So just a little glimpse of what we're up to with the Abbots Book project. Can you hear me if I stand here, or should I stoop? Okay. So my name is Michael Connolly. I'm the founder and creative director of Blackthorn Media. We started the company about 2.5 years ago on the heels of the dissolution of a company called Rhythm and Hues Studios, which did visual effects for things like The Life of Pi and Snow White and the Huntsman. And so all of us have a deep background in visual effects, as the company is a passel of alumni from the visual effects business. We look at Abbots Book as really our sort of signature project for what we're up to. We have another project that's more about riding a dragon and pretending to be Khaleesi from Game of Thrones, which is cool. But Abbots Book is really our sort of our big push into narrative storytelling in VR. As anybody that's getting into this field in VR will tell you, there's a whole lot about storytelling in VR that's very experimental. We are, as you can see, working in a fully CG environment. The story takes place in 17th century Italy. It's about 4 generations of this Italian noble family and how they respond to the corrupting power of a book that's dug up from the catacombs underneath their estate. As you may be able to tell from some of the imagery that we had up here, I apologize, it's a little bit bright in here and maybe hard to see, but there's a lot of mythology in the background here. This is a project I started working on 26 years ago and have been working on in one way or another ever since. So you can see there's the ruins of an ancient civilization underground. The length of time that we're covering in the story spans about 700 years, measured from the beginning of this underground religion and passing up to its destruction. And then the main story takes place between 1610 and 1680 in Vicenza, Italy. You know, like I said, it's really a look at how people respond to the power, you know, these sort of corrupting influences. What it really is about, though, is about how families hand their shit down from one generation to the next. And so there's a, you know, we've got the trappings of a spooky kind of story here, but what we're really hoping to do with this thing is take a very heartfelt look at how, despite our best intentions, we as parents or children pass or receive stuff that we might try very hard to escape, but that comes to haunt us. The exchange there in the basement at the very end is a father meeting his son for the first time in 40 years who's been imprisoned down in the catacombs after meeting an untimely end. The father tries to save his boy, and something terrible happens. So that growling, grunting, horrifying thing in the basement is actually a very sympathetic character. He is the monster in the basement, but he is also kind of the, you know, one of the beating hearts of the story. No pun intended. There's a great reference to Edgar Allan Poe and the Telltale Heart in there too. Anyway, so from a storytelling standpoint, you know, this really jumped out as at us as a VR project, you know, we came to look at it in the context of, let's, you know, how would it feel to have people literally step into the roles of different characters in the story. And so one of the big, you know, experiments that we're having with this project is to literally let you personify most of our main characters. And so there are, you know, there's a moment upon the personification of any one of these characters. You know, we'll show you our cast of characters. We've got 20-something characters we're doing, you know, our main character begins as a 10-year-old boy and finishes the story as an 80-year-old man. And so, for instance, when you, as the visitor into this world, appear, we'll have our cast of characters, we'll have our timeline. It's sort of a rogues gallery of characters. In the finished work, we'll have you, you know, we'll say this is the character that you're about to personify. We'll sort of zoom in on that character. You'll see the world in this kind of black and white. And then, as you can see, we're doing room scale VR here. So the idea here is to actually literally have you step into the body of this character that you're going to personify. We hope right now, and as I said, this is all very experimental, but we hope that in the act of literally stepping into this sort of second skin, that it will evoke a more sort of sympathetic response to, oh, okay, I am this other person. I want to play along in this world. I've got a part to play. And then, you know, of course, there's this big onus on us to make the story, you know, to present the story in a way that's engaging and clear. One of the things that we see from time to time in our current demo is, you know, as you can see, we're putting a torch in your hand, and, you know, so you can walk around and light things up and play with shadows, and that's fun. But one of the things that people do from time to time is, you know, as you're personifying our main character, Tithonus here, Abbot Verga is there kind of griping at you. You're having an argument with him, and a lot of people kind of want to walk up to him and put the torch in his face. So there's a sort. This is one of the sort of, you know, learning examples of how much do we need to accommodate in terms of how people are or aren't willing to participate in a sort of role-playing experiment. So far, this is fun. So far, this feels like a good idea. But we certainly don't pretend to have all the examples or all the, you know, we haven't arrived at a finished result yet. So there's something that's very sort of, we're feeling our way as we build this project.
I have a question for you. Do you think there is there is room for narrative in room scale, or is it going to be mainly games?
Oh my goodness, yeah, no, we're very passionately committed to narrative in room scale. You know, our sort of corporate philosophy here is to build the highest end VR experience possible. To us, that means room scale. It means, you know, not just having your eyes in the world. It means having your hands in the world as well, and ideally being able to move around in the space. We know we're limiting our market dramatically by requiring that for this project. But for now, that's okay. You know, we kind of want to have our cake and eat it too with this. You know, we'll see how we do over the next couple of years. But I think, you know, as room scale or as the sort of standing VR experience continues to improve, you know, we'll get to wireless in the not too distant future. We'll get to you know, good tracking on mobile type devices eventually that should have enough power to realize this world in the way that we like. I'm optimistic that room scale is an awfully good idea for narrative, if for no other reason than because it is such a compelling way to bring you into the space. You know, there's an immediacy and a power to literally being able to walk up to and look into the eye of one of our main characters and have him look back at you and his eyes follow you, and you know, wherever you walk, he's watching you. You know, as you've seen, it's a spooky effect. Anyway, we're really just starting to play with all of this, and it's an exciting time for the sake of, you know, acting on hunches that feel good and then getting good reactions from people. On the other hand, we know, you know, our business model practically has, okay, then there's the budget line for, oops, we made some mistakes, and we're going to need to back up and redo some of these things as we go. You know, we're too excited by the sort of high-end, enveloping, consuming experience to sort of think about doing it any other way. Hopefully we have the luxury of continuing on that front as we go, yes.
I know this kind of VR is kind of pricey, high-end visual effects. Are you subsidizing it by visual effects to work on features or something? I mean, no,
you know, we spent a long time in the feature film business, and we did a lot of work for hire, and now here we are after 20 years in that business saying it's our turn. And so the partners of the company are very, you know, have been very committed to really giving this the best shot we can give it. I think that's shorthand for, you know, we're bootstrapping this. We're putting a lot of our own resources into it. We have some private investors that believe in what we're doing, and we're in the process now of working with some very good strategic partners who we think share our vision for what this all can be. And I'm out of time.
I'm sorry. Also, thank you, Michael. Jessica, you're up. Jessica is going to be showing her latest film, Ashes, that just premiered at Tribeca, and talk about space and time in virtual reality, a big subject. Do you want to start with the movie?
I think with the presentation.
Okay.
I'm going to talk through it a little bit and then show a bit of it. Mainly because, well, I'll explain. Sorry. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to talk about space and time and choreography. This is a narrative told through dance. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a quote because it makes it sound like I put a lot of thought into how this happened. Time is the longest distance between two places, Tennessee Williams and the Glass Menagerie. I kind of got there, but I started playing with time in Ashes, mainly because I wanted to tell a simple story, but in a compelling way that made it really special for the 360 environment. And I had absolutely no money, a rig that I could borrow from Video, a 6-camera GoPro rig, and I knew they'd help me with the stitch, and I have a little bit of After Effects and Premiere skills, and so working with those tools, I was like, how can I make something that's compelling and made for 360? And I realized that like the part that I'm the least excited about is stitching my footage, and kind of challenged myself of how can I use the stitch as a storytelling tool, and use different field of vision for the different moments in time of the same story. So I started playing with layers of history in the same location. So in this story, to your left, you see, and I was really specific with the story for the dancers that were dancing it out. It was a couple on their honeymoon, and towards the end of their 5-minute dance, the wife decided it was hot and wanted to walk to her car to get her hat, and the husband went to take a dip. In the center field of vision, we're starting with a moment in time of their story where he gets in trouble in the ocean, and she comes back to discover him deceased on the beach, washed up. And then to the right, you see the dancer returning some time later, I said a year later, to spread his ashes on the beach. So I played with the 3 different fields of vision to tell different moments in time of the same story. And then to make it even more confusing, I decided to take the center field of vision and put it in reverse. And it wasn't my intention to do that at first, but when I went into the edit and I started watching it, I didn't want to end on the death. I wanted to end with the kind of them being in love. So the end of the middle section is the beginning of the love section. So it's kind of my last point of doing the tragedy in reverse. And part of why I always get really nervous showing this piece. I was absolutely terrified going into Tribeca because I'm asking a lot of the viewer. You're editing this yourself as you're watching it, because you can't, no matter where you look, you're missing key moments in the story and of these lovers' story. But it's similar to your memory. You remember certain moments, you reconstruct a memory in different ways. So depending on where you're looking in the room, you're putting together the story for yourself. And I found that to be terrifying, and when I show it to you and I lead you through it, it kind of defeats the purpose, because it should be you making those choices with your gaze and not me making them for you, and playing with your agency in this environment. And I, because I was able to be really abstract about it and I was only really focused on specific fields of vision at any given time, I actually was on the other side of the camera, and just didn't use that side of myself. And so I was able to kind of scream out emotions to the dancers. So that kind of gets us into choreography in VR. And the quality of this didn't come through very well, so the images are really pixelated. So all of the dancing in this was inspired by a choreographer named Pina Bausch. I'm a huge, huge fan of hers. I was rehearsing with my dancers. I sat down and we sat and watched a lot of her works, and part of it was because of this quote, actually. I'm not interested in how people move, but what moves them. And so part of being really specific with the story and creating this tragic love between the dancers, I was able to not have a choreographer. Because one couldn't afford one, I'm not one, and my dancers felt comfortable improving. So in our rehearsal process, it was really distinct to the music and different moments in the music. So it's 5 minutes, and they dance it 3 different times at 3 different moments in their life. So we talked through what emotions they're going through, like while they're falling in love, while this tragedy is happening, and then while she's back mourning, all different interpretations of the exact same music, which is a solo cello. And because I was able to be on the beach, it's pretty loud shooting on the beach. I had the music there, but it was pretty overpowered by the waves. So it was a lot of me screaming out counts and what they should be feeling. And they did a really incredible job of
behind the scenes.
Well, you can watch the actual stitched videos with me on one side with the thing being like, sad, but it's a little So yeah, I guess the other big thing worth addressing with choreography is your distance from the camera. One of the things, if I were to shoot again, I would actually probably use like a 4 camera or smaller with augmented lenses, because if I got them too much closer, I would have had to deal with a huge amount of parallax because of the movement, and with dance, you want them to move. I mean, stillness is great in dance, but we had so many different factors we were dealing with, framing them really specifically to a single GoPro without any preview, and kind of that same, like, I don't know if it's going to work. I stayed pretty safe, and I kept a nice distance from the camera, which in some ways I like, in some ways I wish I could have done a little bit more closer, but for the next time, I guess. But I guess I can show a little bit of it. And it's the cello performance by my brother, actually. But it kind of goes on a bit like that, and exploring the environment that way. And in this last minute, I'll talk a little bit about what I did with sound. So I had the solo cello and the waves, and I kept the waves always at what would be your front, and then the cello moves from left to right to help cue you where to look. And I found that most people did follow the sound cues unconsciously. There was no game engine or anything, so like if you didn't, you didn't, but it made people feel a lot more comfortable watching it. When I didn't use any sound guide at all, there was more of a FOMO feeling. And once I added that layer in, people wanted to watch it multiple times, potentially, to try and see more of the different stories. But yeah, for the most part, I would say like 80% of the people actually like wanted to be an editor and watch this experience, and then like 20% at Tribeca were like, I want the next experience. So I think that was pretty good, I guess. Anyway, thank you.
All right, last but not least, we have Paul Raphael from Felix and Paul. Do you want me to start the video right away?
You can open it.
Yeah.
Maybe pause it.
Oh, let's not use this one. There you go.
Hey, so I'm actually not going to speak about a specific project today, but I'm kind of going to do an overview of a few of our projects. So Felix and I started off working together about 11 years ago now, and we've really been always obsessed, this was obviously before VR, with the concept of presence, which if you've been following VR is something you hear about all the time, and it's almost become a cliche or like a buzzword, but really I strongly believe that presence, carefully crafted, is the foundation to any really meaningful experience in VR. So what I wanted to show you first was the very first VR piece. It's actually our very first test that we shot in a church. This was the first thing we got working. We had built our first rig. We'd figured it out. We'd done a few tests in our living room. Felix, myself, shooting ourselves. This is the first thing where we actually took it out and tried to shoot something. And to achieve presence, what we really tried to do on this test is really position the camera as if you were really there. So if you're sitting down and you put the headset on this chair, you appear in this church and you're sitting down on a bench in the church. It's at human height, and we didn't want to do anything too crazy. We really, our approach has always been baby steps, like kind of break things down and really it's an almost scientific way of trying to figure out the medium, like bit by bit. And what we wanted to do with this piece is just like, can we really feel like we're really there, period? No story, no nothing. And also, can we really feel like someone else is really there? In this case, this woman right there. And after asking her to sit down, we told her after a moment, just look right into the camera. And so this is the first thing we shot. We started showing it to people, and the reactions were unexpected. People were freaking out, like they were frightened. This woman is actually about 2 feet away from the camera right now, so it's as if I was right here. And I did this. So that was lesson number 1. Yay, presence, but whoa, take it easy. Oh, that was fun. So after that, we went off and tried to figure out, okay, what would be the first actual piece that we'd like to release, and show people. And this is, I'm just going to make sure the volume's not too high. Where's the volume? Okay. So this is Strangers. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to take everything we'd learned on our first piece, but make it a little more interesting. So again, we're like, okay, we're not going to tell a story here necessarily, not a sort of narrative story. We did want this to be much more interesting though. So we're like, let's find a beautiful space or an interesting space and a interesting character, and have that character do something that is not story driven. And so we thought of a musician. And this is Patrick Watson, a brilliant musician from Montreal and a friend. And to do this piece, we kind of followed the same principle that we had in the first piece, which was we positioned the viewer at sitting height, but this time we pushed it a little further. So when we went in there, we asked Patrick, when you play music for a friend, how does that happen? Like where would that person normally sit, and how would you behave with a friend? So the direction was simple: is you've got a friend here, and you're just sort of practicing a song. You're kind of semi-writing it, and so he told us where to put the camera, and that was just this subtle, these few little pieces of information were enough to kind of give the whole scene this sense of realism. Like everything kind of gelled with just a few basic cues and directions, which were sitting down the viewer at a distance that made sense for him. So it allowed him to behave in a way that also made sense for him. Like it wasn't, the camera wasn't too close, it wasn't too far, it wasn't this abstract notion. And I think you feel that as a viewer when you ultimately experience the piece. So actually what I'm doing is I'm going through the pieces we've done sequentially and showing you sort of how we've been evolving and what we've been learning as we've been moving forward. This is a piece I'm actually going to skip this one because I don't have enough time. Okay. So this is a companion piece we did for the film Jurassic World. After some people at Universal saw Strangers, they were like, hey, could you like do that but with a dinosaur? And we're like, yeah, that would be amazing. Let's do that. So what was amazing is that they didn't ask us to do this big scary T-Rex running after you in the Jurassic Jeep, which was just incredible. And really what we propose to do here is, we really wanted to inspire ourselves from that first moment of awe we all felt in the first Jurassic World when the main characters see that first Apatosaurus and it stands up in front of them, and that was like one of the most magical moments in cinema. And we're like, well, let's try to translate that into a VR experience. So I'm just going to pause it here. And so again, we're sitting the viewer down, so you can't see it here, but you're actually sitting on a wooden log, a piece of a broken tree, and again, we weren't working with a person here, we were working with a dinosaur, but we sort of asked ourselves similar questions as we did with Strangers. Okay, who is the viewer? Who is the dinosaur? What's their relationship? And so we're not telling a very complex story here, but the backstory is you are a Jurassic Park ranger. You're on your break. If you look around you, you'll see a few clues to that. You'll see there's a walkie-talkie, there's a Jurassic Park coffee mug, there's your Jeep right there. And the concept is that you actually have a reciprocal sort of friendship with this dinosaur because you go there often. You go there, you work there, and this is the most amazing job ever. You love it, and every coffee break you have, you just go and you sit down there and you have your coffee and you chill with the Apatosaurus. I mean, how amazing is that? And so that helped us establish where to put the camera, what to put around the camera, how the dinosaur would behave towards the viewer, which is kind of friendly and loving and comfortable, and once she identifies you and recognizes you, she's completely at ease, and she just goes about and does her thing. So again, baby steps towards trying to tell a story. I'm going to skip a little ahead here. Okay, so this is the last piece I'm going to show today. So this is another companion piece. This one's to the movie Wild, and I'm actually going to pause it here. Building on what we'd learned, again, we're sitting the viewer down. This time you're sitting down on the rock. And the piece starts and you're actually alone in the forest. So your first question is, okay, what's going on here? Am I actually here? Am I omniscient? So you look around, you see there's a rock there, so you're like, oh no, I'm actually sitting down here. And I'm in the forest. And then what happens is, and this was prior to this clip, is you hear a voice in your head. You hear the voice of the protagonist, here played by Reese Witherspoon, saying a line about her mother. And this plays in your head, and you're like, okay, this kind of puts you in a bit of a dreamlike state, because it's not, all the sounds thus far had been ultra realistic, but this little piece of voiceover in your head kind of shifts the tone a little bit and puts you in a space that's between reality and a sort of dreamlike state. And then after a moment, you see someone approaching, but she doesn't acknowledge you. So at this point, you're thinking, okay, so this is a sort of third-person thing. I'm just going to observe her. She's sort of in her bubble. And after a moment, she actually does look at you. And you might be wondering, so wait, am I here now? But she's actually looking directly across from you at an apparition of her mother. So now you're actually taking on her point of view when you look at her mother, Laura, and vice versa. When you look at Reese, you realize that you're actually looking at her through her mother's eyes. And so even though we haven't cut here, the sort of perspective has been shifting in many different ways, both spatially and you've been sort of taking on the perspective of different characters, and within from your own sort of perspective to a sort of omniscient perspective, to her perspective, to Laura's perspective. And it's a form of editing without cutting, really. And it's just by playing with the nature of what's happening, it's a good way to sort of keep things modulating and fluctuating and exploring different, ways of being in this space. And then finally, there's another little moment which I'll let you interpret. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
All right, we're running out of time. I hope we can squeeze in like maybe 1 or 2 questions before they kick us out. Remember, this is about storytelling. No question about what camera you use or the financing. Just stick to the storytelling, please. Yes, you were the first one. Yeah.
In that video, if somebody's watching it in 360 and they're able to scroll around themselves, when does Laura know this character?
That's a good question. That's actually there's a bit of interactivity going on there. You can only see her. She appears when you're not looking, and she disappears when you're not looking. So you could never see her appear or disappear. What that actually means is that we actually shot Laura for the entirety of the piece, just in case, once you see her, you decide you're never going to look away. So after she's done delivering her lines, she actually goes into this sort of internal, peaceful state and sort of sits there with her hair in the wind until you look away, and that's when she'll disappear.
Yes?
I know that Gun is on Milk, but where can we see the other ones?
First Person is going to be released across all the platforms, so you shouldn't have any trouble finding it.
The Abbots Book demo is available on Steam right now. Okay. And it's free.
Ashes is currently up on Video, and it'll be everywhere soon. I just haven't had time to do it yet.
Everything I showed you is on the Gear VR, on the Samsung. If you have any Samsung phone that's supported by the Gear VR, and slowly trickling onto the Oculus Rift.
Okay, last question. Yes.
For that scene, say with Reese Witherspoon and Laura Dern, how did you manage audio? I mean, did you actually locate it to be linked to them, or was it more sort of? I mean, what do people enjoy as an audience with that?
So the sound was captured from the camera in 360, and we also hid some microphones on the characters to be able to do a mix and post. This sound is sort of tracking your head, and the voice of Laura, even though she's interactive, is there anyway. So there is a version of the experience where you never actually see Laura. If you don't look at her, or you don't look at the right moment, in which case you would still hear the voice and the story is still told.
But is it like stereo?
It's
or
360.
To where she is?
It's 360 sound, so you will hear her. You will hear the sound coming from the direction that it's coming from.
And that's a very, very important point, sound in VR. I'm sorry you only had 1 hour for this panel, because that's another 24 hours just for sound. It's vital, it's very important. I just want to say, if Carlos Allende is in the room, you won the Twitter challenge, so come to see me. There you go. Final word, I think VR storytelling is just in its infancy for now. I really hope you got inspired. I really hope you're gonna make your own VR films now. Experience, try things out. Don't be afraid of doing whatever you have in mind. We need to push this medium even further. We need to push the boundaries, just exactly what those amazing people do. So please shoot some VR, do some VR. It's really cool, and be here with me next year. Thank you very much. Thank you, all the amazing panelists.
Thanks, Celine.